Okay, I'm letting people in.
All right. We're letting you in now, folks. And happy to see the few of you who want to go through the doors of Shamballa sooner than later. There are actually some people who asked Sanat Kumara what they should have for breakfast. I think maybe I think maybe they don't get an intelligible answer on that question. So, Tui and I and our guides, Michael and Joe and BL, and we try to keep things straight and keep the ageless wisdom coming toward you, so you can't resist the study of it all, the application of it all, and the implications for your meditation. And there are deep implications. I know a person who this person does not want to learn the great invocation, because this person says, I have my own way of praying. Well, let's just say a big opportunity is lost. And there's all kinds of wonderful things that one can learn, but if one doesn't have the will to actually open oneself to impression, like the other day we were dealing with the idea of the golden bowl, which we call the etheric body, right? And I realized maybe for the first time, I say, it's a bowl. It's meant to hold something, but what will it hold? From what level of the planes and subplanes and sub-subplanes of the great cosmic physical plane, what will it hold? And can we arrange that that which it does hold is of real spiritual value? I think more and more in the Aquarian age, we will have to arrange that be the case. We're going to have our vigil tonight, number 10. We seem to keep going on that for Afghanistan, but something I think just heartbreaking and shameful, in my view, has occurred with the leaving of so many thousands of people who were working on nation building in Afghanistan over the last 20 years, only to have it overrun by those old medieval forces. But a very astute, longtime student from Australia, a real expert in astrology and healing and diverse approaches, said, well, the taste has been had. The people have tasted what it's like not to be under masculine medievalism, which disrespects women so much. And, it's, if these people who have helped the United States over so many years are going to be left to succumb to that, it's a real shame. And we can't just turn our backs, because it has to do with trust, and with the trust of a Western country like the United States, which fortunately or unfortunately has a very strong Gemini energy. It's a wonderful energy when interpreted from its higher second ray meaning. but it's very unstable when interpreted in the normal way, and has even been accused of, for normal astrologers, they say, "Whoa, Gemini, it's a cowardly energy." In other words, that's why the people that are under that energy and not really into the esoterics and so forth, they're called yellow. Well, what is yellow? Yellow is a slang word which means cowardly, you know? So we're dealing with that, and we'd like to continue for a while at least. We certainly have our own problems in the world with autocratic tendencies attempting to challenge and to thwart hierarchical democratic tendencies. It's a very serious problem. It's not just in the United States, although that may be the place where it foremostly appears, but it's going to be all over the world, you know. Do we abandon the principles of the solar angel, angel of the presence, or do we forge ahead based upon those principles and learn a new control over the dweller on the threshold, which for all practical purposes is the personality of man and the personality of the group and the personality of the nation and the personality of all humanity. There's nothing wrong with the personality. We're going to have that. That is the outer expressive medium to be used by the inner individual. But which comes out on top? And do we succumb to personal implications and intentions, or do we rise into a new state which is characteristic of the fifth kingdom of nature and about which maybe we don't know as much as we think we know? Anyway, we'll be tonight. Sometimes I struggle hard to get all that lined up, but Tuya has the much more difficult task with those particular meditations. And hopefully everything will work out smoothly. Now, so I do want to thank Michael Crow for being here and helping keep us on track, and to welcome Anne from Los Angeles, Ann Parker, and Astro Pharaoh. I'm not sure, Astro, if you want to write me with your email address, I'll know where you're from and how to reach you. And Brennan from, Durango, Colorado, and Catherine Pyre from Australia, and Georgina Sprague, another guest. Georgina, write me, let me know where you're from, and also, if you'd be so kind, your email address, then I can get in touch easily. And then Gudrun, it says Gudrun Frida's iPad. So it must be Iceland, perhaps. I may be mistaken, but let me know your email address, Gudrun, if you would be so kind. Karen Gritzka, from Portland, Oregon, Leslie Van from Phoenix, Arizona, Mariana Larson from Sweden, and Martine Dupont. Again, by now, Martine, I should know your location. I think I do have your email address. And Trudy. Sounds like a good German name. But anyway, Trudy, if you want to attend what we're doing here, and you might send me your email address and your location. And Vivian, too, says Vivian GS. So I need to know your location and your email address, if you'd be so kind. And Zenaidi, who's living in Switzerland. Always remember more booty. We could always use more booty. This is Zenaidi's kind of way of identifying. So here we are, and ready. I do wish, my friends, that it were possible. Well, maybe you couldn't stand it. I don't know. For Tuya and me, here and there, to continue offering our analysis of what the Tibetan is saying, to sort of cross-reference his, what I call, his one big book, his one big sphere of knowledge. There's so much in it, and it's so well organized, and it's so much in detail that we would all benefit if we could simply follow and apply what he is saying. No easy task. I study outlines and specificities, and then I go ahead a few pages and I say, what was I just reading? Then I have to go back, because you can imagine, to ponder is to go over something attentively, over and over, until it really sinks in. I don't know how many of us have the patience for that kind of study at this time, but it is a good time to do that, because the great conclave is coming, and the era of the forerunner, which began in 1965, is now concluding after 60 years. Kind of interesting about that 6, because it tells us something about both the astral plane and the monadic plane, and maybe their relationship. So always pay attention to what can I call numerical similarity. Maybe similarity is not exactly the word I want, but it is a numerical relationship. Always pay attention to those things, because I just know from reading the Tibetan a long time that he really pays attention to, well, I think I have the word now, numerical affinity. Affinity is when you go along with something and it is harmonious. So there are many aspects of his teaching which are in numerical affinity with each other. And it's not just happening by the way, it's happening, and he is arranging it that way. There's a reason why sometimes a threefold sequence appears, or a fivefold sequence, or even a sevenfold sequence. There's always a reason, and it really has to do with his control of numbers and understanding relationships. Now, when we were able to deal with Shamballa before, now, look, friends, this is a 729 page compilation by that expert compilation maker, Zach Rymil in New Zealand. He's the best, as far as I'm concerned, about making a very impressive impressive what? Compilations that make an impression on us. So the big outlining that you see are the words that he considers important in this area, or maybe the most important. When we were last reading, we were talking about this energy that brings death to those material forms and organized bodies which hinder the free expression of the life of God. Let's just say the Shamballa energies get things out of the way through three particular qualities. In this order, they are given as purification, second ray, destruction, first ray, and what is it? I don't think it's criticism. I think it's some sort of creativity. I'm now, unfortunately, forgetting that third, organization. No wonder. Maybe someone with more seventh ray would remember it. But organization is the third factor. And through those three factors, Shamballa manages to clear a great deal of what stands in our way on the forward path. In a way, we're all headed for some kind of relationship with Shamballa. We may not stay here the way those who are on the path of Earth service remain connected with Shamballa, but there will come a time when the monad and Shamballa are of very great directing power in our life. And if we ever, we will become sixth degree initiates, there is a time when Sanat Kumara may, figuratively tap you on the shoulder and say, okay, you're needed among the sixth degree initiates to make a decision every 49 years about the manner in which you will help humanity. And those decisions can be very eventful. 1854, 1903, 1952, 2001, and finally 2050. Those are all years of great decisions by the sixth degree initiates. So along comes this energy, this Shamballa energy, and it's uncharacteristic compared to the normal energies to which we have become accustomed. So what happens? Humanity, it says here, draws back in fear and likes it not. Now you can think about that, because we oftentimes say, well, Shamballa, I'm really interested, but the closer you get to the fire, and finally the sea of fire on the cosmic physical plane, the more the fear reaction may step in. Maybe monads on the first degree, rather first ray, are more immune to this fear reaction. These are days, aren't they, because of the COVID, where we're talking a lot about immunity. There's all kinds of it. So when full of personality, hate, and self-will, not the real will, human beings seek often to turn this energy to their own selfish ends. And may I add that Hitler and his group, they were 7 together, and they were, from the personality angle, evil men in whom the power of love did not really exist substantially at all, or it was very limited. They did use that Shamballa energy lovelessly and in its exterminating mode, responsible as they were for the deaths of millions of different kinds of people. Going on with DK, if human beings, even the best of them, were not so undeveloped and so superficial in their judgments and their vision, and so I pause to say he's really given us an assessment there that should give us pause to assess. And then he goes on, they would be able to penetrate behind what is going on in the key countries in the world and see the gradual emergence of new and better conditions and the passing away of the loved but slowly decaying forms. Well, that's going to take us right back to the Buddha and his theory of aggregation. All aggregates de-aggregate. Whatever comes together will fall apart. And so he wanted us to hold very loosely to the world of phenomena, where everything is made up of aggregations. Finally, the only non-aggregated whatever is the absoluteness itself. The only no thing which is indivisible, has no aggregations, and is what it is alone, with no other competition, shall we say, no other. Now, some of those thoughts get a little bit strange. He goes on to say, the energy of Shamballa is, however, so new and so strange that it is hard for human beings to know it for what it is. Okay, well, that we can accept or not. I think we would be foolish not to accept it. Accept it, know it for what it is, the demonstration of the will of God in new and potent livingness. Now, I think we all want the livingness, but we don't want to necessarily go through the purification and destruction and even organization which lead us there. So, okay, we're going to have to learn to deal with this energy. And we have to have the humility to know that thus far we do not know how to deal with this energy. We don't know. Maybe there are a few people here and there who have a powerful connection with it. Maybe Lincoln was one, and I don't know, maybe General Patton was another, and also DK tells us about Ataturk, who was the reformer, was the military man, the reformer of the civilization in Turkey, who used this kind of energy in a manner which Master DK called disinterested, meaning that he didn't have a personal investment in it. He was using it for larger purposes. There are others, but mostly people get it wrong. And if they're touched by this energy, they start to utilize it in a more personal way, which leads to a form of egotism, which leads to a form of illusion and glamour, which prevents the true spiritual progress. So, which one are you? Well, that's going to require some pondering. Now we go on to the second factor. The second way in which this dominant will impulse makes itself felt is through, now this is interesting, through the voice of the masses of the people throughout the world. In other words, when he says there's an uprising, the people demand this, the people demand that, the divine will may be working out through them. And it's part of the process we would call the elevation of the masses. What do? They kind of move into the Leo modality out of the Cancerian modality. So when people are involved in revolutions, which may look so destructive and inimical to the civilizational factors that we have held near and dear, they're actually being progressive so often and seeking to express the divine will to some degree, because it is really inherent in every human being. Now, this is interesting, and I'm not sure I know what to make of it, but the voices of the masses of people. Okay, this will express itself through sound as consciousness or love. He equates the two, notice, does through light. Now, that's a very interesting idea, that the will of the people, the voice of the masses, is expressing through sound. Let's make sure that everybody, want to make sure that if you, what's it called, subtitle settings, view full transcript, right, you should be able to see something there about the full transcript. Michael, let's make sure they can see that, because I haven't been noticing it appear in the text. And
for subtitles will automatically open up, but if you want to view the text transcript of this, you either go on the bottom where it says live transcript, and if it's not there, then you click more, and then in more it'll say show full transcript.
Oh, I have something called close full transcript, so maybe it's on, I don't know.
Then it's on.
It's just that I don't see it.
Yeah, well, while you're sharing your screen, you won't have the same like visual aspects that.
Okay, I did have that before on one occasion, but I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop just to do that. When you pick up the audio transcript later, friends, and that's sometimes why I want your email address, so I can send you that particular audio transcript, because when we put these up on Makara, or we put them up on our YouTube channel, it's a different mode, and you don't see the video transcript if you want it. So I'm just not quite sure.
Well, for them, when they open up live transcript, there is a button on the bottom where they can click save transcript. So at the end of this, they can click save transcript. That will save it to their computer.
Okay, there's some mysteries here, right? Okay. It says, well, all right. I'm just going to let it go, because I don't have time to. I don't have time at the moment to do this. Last time it was showing up while I spoke as words. But anyway, so it's the will to express itself through sound as consciousness or love does through light. Now, that is an interesting distinction, because sometimes sound comes first, then comes light, and then maybe color and things like that. There are other sequences that go like this, vibration, light, sound, and color. That's a different sequence. But so often DK gives a setup in which sound expresses the will and light expresses the consciousness. So what does he say here? The sound of the nations has been heard as a mass sound for the first time. Wow. I mean, these are eventful days through which we are living. And this is about will, because if the sound of the nations is being heard, then the will of the nations is also emerging. And it's no longer just the mass consciousness, it's going into something higher. So the sound of the nations has been heard as a mass sound for the first time. You want to ask yourself, who's doing the listening? Because we're not hearing that, are we? But someone like the Tibetan and the masters and Chohans, they can hear that. And it means an unique opportunity. That voice today, he says, is unmistakably expressive of the values which embody human betterment. It demands peace and understanding between men. I mean, all human beings, obviously. And it refuses, and will steadily refuse, to permit certain drastic things to happen. This voice of the people, which is in reality the voice of public opinion. Now, remember, please, he's always talking about the power of public opinion and how one of our tasks is to help alter public opinion for the good. And I think we do recognize the pressure of public opinion. So this voice of the people, which is in reality the voice of public opinion, is for the first time, and with no recognition of the fact by such as we are, being determined by the will of God. So the will of God is behind the mass voicing expressed through public opinion. And it is a great pressure. And it is, in terms of its quality, and maybe we can feel this emerging, expressive of the values which embody human betterment, yeah, well, that's all I'll put down. There's more. The whole paragraph is good and useful. So we listen to the people of which we are part, of course, and we listen to the demand, because it's a much different type of demand coming from the will of God than the selfish, elitist voice that wants to preserve the well-being of only a few, and wants to basically corner the resources of the world for their own selfish purposes. It's not for the welfare of the many. And Shamballa would have as its motivation a commonly used phrase, the greatest good of the greatest number. Now you can ask yourself as you think about how you face the prospect of service and whom you serve. Are you serving just a few in your immediate circle, or are you thinking more broadly about group good, about national good, without reverting to selfish nationalism? That is, the soul of the nation is what you're thinking about. And then, of course, the good of the soul of humanity as a whole. Now, DK said the big deficiency amongst disciples is they just don't love humanity, or they don't love it enough. And you can ask yourself about that, because this is the path of self-examination, and we might as well be truthful with ourselves. Is it just some kind of verbal ideal, or have we flipped over into that fifth kingdom state of consciousness where we actually do love humanity? This is not an easy question. I mean, there are people with a certain radius, and it can be expanding radius, and they do love. Yes, they love more than themselves. They love a group. They may even be patriotic in the true sense of the word. But I was paused in my tracks when I was doing a recent discipleship in the New Age commentary. The deficiency is that disciples do not love humanity. And we can just say glibly, oh yes, I love humanity, but no. There's got to be a real exploration of whether we do. There's a lot of good people, and there are a lot of people who are not so good when it comes to expressing spiritual values. But do we love them? That's the question. I'm remembering DK talking about how it was when people disagree with you and really hold a completely contrary position and seem justifiably worthy of criticism. And his very first question about how we respond was, do you love them? So, that's a little bit of a surprise when it comes to your enemy. But as we're well aware, Lord Maitreya gave that seemingly impossible task, impossible at times, love your enemy. So it's not going to be about what they do personally. It's going to be about essence. It's going to be about soul. It's going to be about who they really are and not who they seem to be when they are under the spell of the dweller on the threshold. So anyway, this dominant will impulse is making itself felt through the voice of the masses of people in the world. It's not for nothing. Not all uprisings are equal. We may have selfish uprisings, but behind it, I suppose, is always the hope for something better. And then he's going on here in the same subject, and he says, second, the next great energy which is making its potent contribution to the present situation is that of the second ray of love, wisdom, Christ's ray. And may I add, and you know, the strongest ray at this time in our solar system, and probably always will be, because ultimately I do believe our solar logos will be demonstrating the highest of its monadic rays, which will be the second ray of love, wisdom. It is, after all, a great heart center. So if we can live according to indigo, seems a strange thing to say, but if we can live in the indigo light, we are really accomplishing something for the future of our planet, a second ray soul, okay, and for the future of our solar logos. Not only at this time a second ray soul, yes, not a second ray, yes, a second ray personality now, but not the next incarnation, but second ray soul now, and most probably its highest monadic ray is the second ray. I talk about monadic rays being higher and lower. One type of monadic ray has to do with the monadic plane, which for our solar logos would be the cosmic monadic plane. But a still higher monadic ray would be found on the cosmic correspondence to the sea of fire, which we find on our logoic plane. There's something way, way up there, which has to do with the liberated monad of the solar logos, in which it will focus either within the Father, the Son, or the Holy Spirit, cosmically considered. Well, those kinds of considerations are way, way, I mean, well, they're words to us, okay? But for the masters and the Chohans, maybe they can begin to speculate about those kinds of relationships which are taking place on a very high level. And of course, what it makes me want to do, and I usually get lost when I try to do it, unfortunately, is go to this thing that Tuya has, her diagrams, which I think are the most accurate so far. And you'll take a look at it, and you'll see, well, look, this is the cosmic monadic plane. And our solar logos is part of one of those 7 triangles in one of the 7 circles that I call sub-parabrahmanic logoi. So, because this is parabrahm, this is cosmic parabrahm. And somewhere up here is the liberated monad, one day liberated, of our solar logos, which is its truest monadic nature, just the way our truest monadic nature is down here in either the Father, Son, or Holy Ghost on the cosmic physical plane, cosmic etheric plane. Well, as I said, it's a feast for the mind to consider these things, but realistically, we actually have nothing to do with it except to get a sense of the grand scheme of things, just the way Alice Bailey did when the Tibetan would talk and she would get these tremendous insights beyond even what he was saying. His books are like that. They're full of opportunity to get those kinds of insights, which are literally the book within the book, within the book, within the book, within the book, you know. There are hints about things that he just doesn't say, but if you are astute enough, and how many of us are astute as Alice Bailey was astute, they appear. And you just say, wow, you know. It's said that, what's his name, the head of Apple, he died recently, Steve Jobs, but as he was dying, he kind of looked up and just said, wow. He saw something, you know? He saw something, and that something remains for all of us to see. So we begin by saying the second ray is really important. It is Christ's ray, and Christ is going to be traveling at first, not the path to Sirius, even though he is the transfigured Syrian initiate. He's going to be traveling the ray path, the 5th path of higher evolution, where essentially he becomes a ray of love wisdom. And then, as the Tibetan says, wherever else his adventures or travels may take him, he will eventually find his way into the Syrian system. So here we have this great energy of love wisdom, and he calls it the second great energy that makes its contribution to the present world situation. Oh goodness, look what I've done. Let's see if I can do this the right way. So far it's not the right way. Okay, but maybe I can do it. And that would be it. Here's the second ray of love wisdom. This is a ray, of course, which we like to deal with. It's loving kindness. It's really caring wisely about the form of man and adjusting the form to the spirit. It's not so drastic, you might say. And we have a lot to learn on this particular ray. This energy, says the Tibetan, is poured into the world through the second great planetary center, which we call the hierarchy. So Shamballa and the hierarchy. And the bridging that goes on between them, because that is also being accomplished at this time. Hierarchy has not completed its bridge to the center of will. That is, in general. Maybe there are a few, like the three great lords, the Manu, the Bodhisattva, who is the Christ, and the Mahachohan, who have a greater freedom and connectivity to Shamballa. But anyway, the energy poured into the world from this place, from the second ray, is connected with the hierarchy. And then going on, he says, the energy which is concentrated in this center and which is manipulated by the initiates and the masters is making one of its cyclic impacts upon Earth. Now, may I pause to say, the great science of cycles focused on the third level of our atmic plane is simply beyond us. So DK knows about this cyclic impact and its duration. He says, it's manipulated by the initiates, is making one of its cyclic impacts on Earth, as I explained in volume 2 of a treatise on the seven rays, is also making one of its cyclic approaches to Shamballa. No, to humanity, forgive me. Yeah, to humanity. So, just like every point of focus, the field of energy in the center is pulled in two directions. And one, in this case, is towards Shamballa, and the other is towards humanity. Excuse me. So one day, when we have atmic consciousness, the consciousness of the third plane, the third solar plane of the cosmic physical etheric plane, we will know the science of cycles, the way DK knows them. Now, by studying astrology in an esoteric manner, something of value can come through, and DK has given hints about ray cycles. based on the number 1 for the first ray, based on the number 5 for the second ray, based on the number 9 for the third ray. And then there have been speculation by certain rayologists. Stephen Pugh believes, based on the number 2.5 or 25 for the fourth ray. I think he has good reason for saying that. And based on 3.5 or 35 for the fifth ray. And then DK himself indicates that 15, 150, 1500, these are the numbers for the sixth ray, and then coming back to solidarity, the number 7 is the basis for cycles on the seventh ray, just the way the number 1 was the basis. 1, 10, 100, 1000, etc. was the basis for the first ray. So the masters know how to do this. They know how to manipulate this second ray energy. Thank goodness they do. And they even do it in a kind of personal way, because they help us gain some kind of expression on this second ray. And I would say that that's, at this time, the most important thing that can be done. DK goes on to say the energy flowing through the hierarchy at this time, the energy of love, maybe it could be a different energy, but anyway, at the moment, it's love, and I presume to a degree wisdom. You know, that's the dual ray of indigo, love, wisdom, is seeking to blend with that which is flowing out of Shamballa. Notice the possibility of blending, which certain evil people, at least in the personality sense, have not noticed and have not cared about. So it's seeking to blend with that which is flowing out of Shamballa and is needed in order to make the desired application of it. And I think what he's saying there is that if you want to apply the will in a way that is really fit to the plan, fit to the purpose of the planetary logos and beyond, you need love. You need love wisdom. Otherwise, you will not apply this drastic energy in the right way. The problem, he says, of the hierarchy at this time is to produce a wise and adequate fusion of the Shamballa and the hierarchical energies, and thus temper destruction. Think of that now, even in your own personal life. And going on, bring to the fore the spirit of construction. May I add that there is an aspect of the first ray under Vulcan which is constructive compared to the destructive use of that ray under Pluto. So we're talking about tempering destruction, he says, and bring to the fore the spirit of construction, setting in motion the building and rehabilitating, notice those words, of the second ray energy. So what can I say? Hierarchy has the task of blending with Shambalic energy and thereby building anew according to purpose. And I like that word, rehabilitating. It means, in a way, to put on new clothes. Maybe it's something about the aura, to put on a different type of aura, one which is truly responsive to divine purpose. But anyway, that's hierarchy's task. Now, humanity's task is to work with the energy of intelligence, of course, and with the energy of love from hierarchy. It's only the very few in this forcing process that we are going through who can respond in some measure. And it's quite a slight measure, I think, to the Shamballa energy. And that's where the forcing process comes in, of course, because humanity is experiencing these Shamballic impacts at this time, and they are really forcing the issue and perhaps making us go through what otherwise we would be loath to go through under normal circumstances. The Shamballa energy prepares the way for the energy of the hierarchy. Well, it all comes from Shamballa, just like it all comes from the monad. Everything below those centers, one from a planetary perspective and the other from a personal perspective, is the result of that higher center. The monad is doing this, the monad is doing that. Now we call it this, now we call it that. But it's always the monad, the one, the essence, which is operating. So we're being told that the Shamballa energy prepares the way for the energy of the hierarchy. Well, sometimes the way has to be cleared. And when you look at the energies coming from Shamballa, purification is the very first energy. Now that's the second ray part of the equation. So destruction will follow, and then organization will follow. But if we really want to receive the Shamballa energy, we have to deal with the aspect of it that's mentioned first, and that is purification. I have seen disciples who rush things and say, oh yeah, I've dealt with purification already. I don't have to purify anymore. But of course, purification is the fiery experience which really opens the door to much higher states of awareness. So anyway, the Shamballa energy prepares the way for the energy of hierarchy. Thus it has been from the beginning of time. Well, we know time never began, but we also know that when dealing with any universe, there is a beginning, and then you can call that the beginning of time. Thus it has been from the beginning of time, but the cycles of the hierarchy, though relatively frequent, well, what do we call it? 100 years? Yes, look what's coming up with the Great Conclave. 500 years? Absolutely. 900 years? Those are relatively frequent cycles, and I think they do belong to the hierarchy. But here's the issue. But the cycles of the hierarchy, though relatively frequent, have not coincided with those of Shamballa, which are rare and infrequent. And DK might say, well, you're very fortunate there because you already have more than you can handle. And when one of these Shamballa impacts comes along, I'm sorry, it can be, in a sense, overwhelming. And I think we're in that right now. In the year 2000, there was a Shamballa impact. In 2001, there was a great decision. In 2025, there will be a great hierarchical meeting looking at hierarchy in the larger sense, and Shamballa will be involved. In 2050, the next great decision period of 6-degree initiates who are being retained by Sanat Kumara at this time because they are needed to help, that will take place. So, well, maybe those are not so frequent, especially if we add another 0, We give it 1,000 years, we give it 5,000 years, we give it 9,000 years, and so forth. But let's just say that we can learn to handle the hierarchical impacts, realizing that the Shamballic impacts are less frequent and more demanding. So they haven't coincided. Shamballa has been having its impacts rare and infrequent. Going on here, as time progresses, the impact of the Shamballa force will be more frequent because men will develop the power to stand and withstand it. Like, there was probably some kind of Shamballa impact which was the destruction of Lemuria. We know that Shamballa was involved in the many floods and the sinking of what we have called Atlantis. There's a lot to that. And then we know that Shamballa has been involved since, 1825, something like that. The first of the recent Shamballa impacts, and also in the year 2000, the most recent Shamballa impact per se. There's one more. I think I'm forgetting it. Something going on in the 20th century, but not a Shamballa impact per se. The one in 1825 was a true Shamballa impact. Anyway, they're happening more frequently because apparently we can find a way to stand and withstand it. Hitherto, says the Tibetan, it has been too dangerous an energy to apply to mankind. How interesting. Well, if a great destruction of civilization was required, it could be said to be applied. Lemuria, I think, was destroyed by volcanic activity, fire, and Atlantis, although it's very diversified in its landmass, was at least in part destroyed by Shamballic energy. We have not had a similar destruction of the Aryan root race, but we have had what some people have called already an Armageddon. Others, Christians and so forth, of the Orthodox type, they wait for Armageddon to occur, but already it may have occurred in relation to the Great War. So just think, too dangerous to apply to mankind, for the results have worked out destructively, except in the first great Lemurian crisis. Maybe that would be considered individualization. Not only the destruction of Lemuria, but the founding of the human race. Its work has therefore been confined entirely to the hierarchy, whose members are equipped to handle it and to assimilate it correctly. We can't do that yet, right? We can't do that. We're struggling under that kind of pressure going on, and also to use it for the benefit of humanity. We've had an awful lot of destruction, and, well, maybe in the long run, it has swept clean the slate. But in general, there's been a very destructive effect. Now the experiment is being attempted of permitting man to receive it and its impact free from the mediation of the hierarchy. It may prove premature and abortive effort, but the issues are not yet determined. Okay. And the Lord of Shamballa, with his assistants, they are called the lights that carry out the will of God, and with the aid of the watching members of hierarchy, are not discouraged over the initial results. Humanity is responding unexpectedly well. Now, when we look at all of the destruction that we've been witnessing, you can wonder at a statement like that, but DK is seeing things from a much higher perspective. There has been much success along this line, but the results do not appear with clarity to intelligent human beings because they refuse to see anything except the destructive aspect and the disappearance of the forms to which they have hitherto anchored their emotion, their desire, their mental perception. Now that's quite a statement, and it's just criticizing, or pointing out at least, our superficiality. We just are so aggrieved over the loss of our immediate attachments that we don't see what has really been accomplished. Now, I can't call this a Shamballa impact, but DK said that unless World War I had been fought, there would have been complete stagnation in the rulership of Europe, with everyone related by blood to everybody else, basically a family matter, with a certain family spread out as the kings and the queens and the czars and so forth of these different nations. A broom came along, and it sounds like Shamballa. It certainly probably had a lot to do with the Great Decision of 1901. And was it really a Shamballa impact? Well, probably not in the classical sense. I'll just read a little more because our time is up. They fail as yet to see the irrefutable evidence of constructive activity and true creative work. The temple of humanity in the new age, encouraging here, is rising rapidly, but its outlines cannot be seen because men are occupied entirely with their individual or national selfish point of view, and with their personal and national instincts and impulses. Let us call it the old patriotism, I love my country, but not yours. DK then says, I would like here to call your attention to the fact that the instinctual life of nations is something which remains to be studied scientifically and is a phase which leads inevitably to the individualistic life of nations, and that a matter of more immediate interest. The ageless wisdom is deep indeed, and we are superficial so far. All right, well, that's all I can possibly do right now, and maybe it's too much, because I've got to get off the. We've got to leave a little bit before 7 o'clock, because Tuya and I have this vigil, 10th vigil for Afghanistan, and the question of whether medieval Islam will overtake all higher possibilities in that country. And that of course relates to other countries too. It's not something that just stays confined to one area, not at all. So this has been the end of, it looks like, discussion 5 on Shamballa, and looks like quite a bit of time has passed, because we're at the 5th of September 21, and the next time we meet again will be, I don't know who to ask to, Michael, if you have that or not, but I'm just going to call it the XX of September, and I assume it will be at 5 o'clock, yes, and it will be discussion number 6. And I can't really talk about pages because when we explore these things in depth, we're not moving rapidly in terms of page count, okay? Now, so let's, I know Michael will help me here. There's something. Look at what that says. Shamballa activity is characterized by fear and terror. Woo! Well, we have to really examine what that means. Most of it, anyway. Most of it. All right. So we have a little bit of time, not too much, because we have to start at 7:20 or 7:19 or whatever. And I always have some kind of difficulty receiving the new PowerPoint and all that, so hopefully all that can be done in time. What are your thoughts, if you have thoughts about all this, or your questions, or your ideas regarding any thoughts that have come up from the Tibetans' words or from the connections which I have tried to make? What are your thoughts? Do you want to speak? Do you want to ask? Or do you want to do nothing at all? Sometimes I feel like that. I mean, I just have to close my mouth, which is a hard thing to get me to do, and say, I've just got to let it sink in, you know. And it will over time. What does he say? DK says, keep silence and the light will enter in. I think he says that in his 15 counsels in the White Magic book, page 473. We get by with a little help from our friends, and we don't have to do everything ourselves. Anything.
Astra Pharaoh says this has been so very interesting, especially the explanation on numbers. Is there any more info on this?
Well, some of the numbers work is found in the book Esoteric Psychology #1. I think he takes the word Shamballa apart, and he compares numerologically the word for, F-O-U-R, and force, F-O-R-C-E. So he gives you a little hint about how he pursues esoteric numerology. But I would just say, if the number is the same, watch for relations between those factors for which the number is the same. If I'm talking about our solar logos as being a logos of the 4th order, which it is, if I'm talking about our planet Earth as being 4th from the sun, which if you include Vulcan, it is, in terms of at least the major planets, there may be some other little ones in there, but 4th from the sun in terms of major planets. If I'm talking about the creative hierarchy of human initiates working on subplane number 4 in the cosmic, etheric, physical plane, what we call our normal 7 planes, if I'm talking about the idea that in our planetary scheme, and especially our planetary chain, we're in the 4th round. If I'm talking about the fact that the human kingdom is known as the 4th kingdom, because it stands midway, you may have mineral, plant, animal, and then human, followed by the kingdom of souls, the kingdom of planetary lives, and finally the solar kingdom. So it is number 4. And let's see if there's, well, that ought to be, quite enough in a way. I've left out a few things. I mean, humanity is ruled by Mercury with its 4th ray, as a hierarchical ruler of the Buddhic plane and so forth. There's a bunch of 4s there. And you can draw lines, numerically significant lines, between all those 4s, if you will. You might even say, you want to go further? Well, look at our solar logos. He's part of a cosmic logos, and that solar logos represents the heart center of that cosmic logos. Well, start counting from the top of your head. Here is 1, here is 2, here is 3, and then the heart center is the 4th. So if you ponder the lines of numerical relationship between all these 4s, ideas will come. Even ideas really begin on the 4th plane and not below that, because the 4th plane is the Buddhic plane where the world of ideas begins to appear. So, DK doesn't go into it with extreme thoroughness. He gives some hints in esoteric psychology 1 about 4 and force and how to assign numbers to Shamballa and all that. He does that, but the rest is up to us. We are the ones who have to ponder the numerical connections. And if we ponder contemplatively, then the light will begin to flash forth. The light will appear. So it's not going to be a short-term process, and it is largely up to us. I had forgotten that word, but a lot in what I've said uses the word or combination numerical affinity. And I've been pondering numerical affinity for a long time. And I can relate it also to music and to color, especially more, in my case, music, because that's how I was trained. I look for the color green as representing in the octave scale the 4th. Dum, dum, ta-dum. We all recognize, Here Comes the Bride, but that is the green color, and its number is what's called in music a fourth. Now, that and its ruler are definitely going to be connected with all of those fours, but we have to figure out how it is. Now, I've done some work on Letters on Occult Meditation, where I've not only, what have I done? In some places I've written it all out, and in other places it's a video commentary. There's a lot about music there and the correspondences that we need. Now, this could be a long-winded response here that I'm giving you. The fourth is the indication of the third aspect. So we know that one of the esoteric colors of Saturn is green. But Saturn is the third aspect, indicated by the fourth in the scale of music. And it goes on that way, you know. We have blue for the fifth, but the second aspect is related, and we have indigo for the sixth, we might call it, in musical scales, and the A there stands for the fifth ray. So there's all these correspondences. Now, get the correspondences out in front of your eye and start drawing lines of connection, and the light will come. And I speak about somebody. I'm not saying, look, I have the light. I'm a beginner. When I look at Master DK, come on. All of us are in that beginning phase. But we can learn, and we can become a master of correspondences, just the way he is, by drawing lines of numerical affinity, which lead eventually to that intuitive state which we call pure reason on the Buddhic plane. I hope that that was not confusing. I hope that it was indicative, at least. Okay, anything else?
It's actually all. No hands and no other questions.
I know, friends, that...
and she says very helpful.
Okay, well, that's a start, you know. All we just need a start. A friend wrote to me recently and said, people don't realize, but if they've taken the first initiation, which all true aspirants have taken, that they are really, and then he used the word, saved. I guess, you know, he meant occultly saved, because they are then treading the path to much higher states of awareness. Now, there are challenges along the way. You might pass through a great purification at the baptism, the second initiation, which maybe, you know, to be a true member of the new group of world servers, you have to pass that second degree. And maybe we'll be out there symbolically for 40 days fasting in the wilderness, just like the Christ accompanied by the Master Jesus. And maybe we'll know just what to say to the devil and mean it. Man does not live by bread alone. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Well, and the one that has to do with the world, I'm not sure. I'm not remembering exactly what that is, but 3 decisive statements that the Christ made to the devil in the form of the personality. And he dramatized that for everybody. So there are challenges, because if we if we're on the way, and if you've taken the second initiation, you really are on the way. You have entered the stream, as they say. That's found in the book The Secret of the Golden Flower, translated by Blavatsky. So everything could look pretty good for you in terms of going on to the Syrianly sponsored path of initiation. But it's possible to mess up in the desert and to give in to the world, the flesh, or the devil of pride. The world is sort of large recognition, being special in some way and worshipped in some way. And the flesh, of course, we're all familiar with what that can mean, to which he says man does not live by bread alone, but by the very breath that cometh out of the mouth of God, something of that nature. Oh yeah, there's another one where he says, get thee behind me, Satan. Now, that is a very popular little mantra, and I think it has to do, well, it's either with the devil or with the world. I'll have to look it up again, but that's what we would find. So there are challenges along the way. And even though taking the first initiation is a very good sign that you're on your way, in that interval between the second initiation and the third, there is a moment of testing. And if you make the wrong choice, you may be indicating some magnetism towards the left-hand path from which you will have to recover before it's too late. I say that for all of us. Okay, is that it then?
Ann Parker said she wanted to share something briefly, and I'm thinking that she wants to speak, so I'm going to ask her to unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
good. I just was thinking, you were reading about sound and Shamballa and the public opinion and revolution, basically. And it reminded me, I just wanted to share this because it was such a spectacular moment for me. I went to the first Women's March in Washington, D.C. when Trump was inaugurated the next day, which I'm kind of laughing reading the Shamballa activity is characterized by fear and terror. So that may have activated this activity, just my opinion. But during the march, I think they estimated 500,000 people, I won't say women, were there. And the moment I'm thinking of is Alicia Keys, who's a lovely singer, was performing. And at the end of her performance, she started doing a call and response with the entire crowd, like things like, "We're not moving." And what I want to point out is the response of about 500,000 people on the streets of Washington, D.C., the sound went through your body. I've never experienced anything like that. And the fact that seemingly we were of one thought, of one feeling, and of one purpose at the same time was really, I guess the word that comes to mind is elevating, and I will never forget it. It really did feel like the whole world could have been with us chanting, and it was just above and beyond. So I just wanted to share that that was really a physical manifestation for me of a little bit of what you were talking about. It was really something special. So thank you for letting me share.
That was a great moment. I remember looking at that. I said, "Wow, look at this group that's gathered to really stand up for what needs emphasis." I said, "So many people," I thought to myself. And then to have you there and to tell us about the experience of the sound of will, the sound of the will, coming through is very uplifting thought. And well, the battle is on, there's no question about it. The people who have the higher values and they've been around a little bit longer and they're older souls probably in terms of the experiences they've had, and those who just feel frightened by the changes that are imminent as the Aquarian age is coming. So that's a very helpful reminder, and I hope that there's going to be more of that, because now we face other issues which basically show the selfish minority trying to take over the will of the more enlightened majority. So, we've got to hang in there, and there's going to be, next 4 years are going to be really, they will be something. I can't even predict, but I know that the Lodge of Darkness or form will throw everything they've got at a smooth entry into a better way. So we just have to be ready for that. Very brave and very cautious at the same time. So thanks, Ann. That's an uplifting reminder. Very, very encouraging. Thank you. Okay, friends, I guess we're getting there, right? That's it.
Yeah, that's all.
I think that's it. Okay. All right. Well, like in all things, Tuya and I and the whole team here, Michael is the part of the team that's representing today, but we've got Joe and Biel and Michael Stacy and, always kind of present at these things, so we can stay on the right track. And my gratitude to all of them and to all of you. Now, in just won't be long now, about a half hour, Tuya and I will be dealing with vigil number 10 of the Afghanistan crisis, which is really more than just a localized thing. It has to do with trust. It has to do with freedom. It has to do with medievalism versus modernity. There are just so many issues that are involved. So I'm going to sign us off here in terms of the recording, and then Michael will help us all leave because he's the host. So lots of love, many blessings, and we'll be seeing you around, Okay, bye for now.